Rising concerns of food insecurity, growing agriculture export, farm sector led pollutions, and the rising health concerns, we need to evolve agriculture for a secure future of the farm sector. In that context, we have our next session on agroecology based enterprises. Since just shifting to sustainable models is not enough for agroecology based enterprises, we need to give outputs of scale. So here we have with us our moderator, Elizabeth. I would like you to please join in the stage. Please give a big round of applause. She's from IFAD. She's the program officer in India. Now I'll invite our panelist, Mr. Rajiv Ahal, who is the director of Natural Resources Management and Agroecology, GIZ India. Please give a big round of applause. Now I invite Mr. Siraj Hussain, who is the advisor, Food Processing and Trustee, World Food Programs, Trust of India. Welcome, sir. Now I call upon Ms. Nivedita Varshnaya, who is the country director of Wealth Hunger Life India. Welcome, ma'am. Now I call Dr. G.V. Ramanjanilulu, sorry for the wrong pronunciation if I have made, who is the executive director of Center for Sustainable Agriculture. I'll give it over to Ms. Elizabeth now so that we can go ahead with the interactive discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the warm welcome here on stage. And thank you very much to all of you for joining us here. It's really a pleasure to be moderating this esteemed panel discussion on agroecology-based enterprises and the route to scale. Just to give you also a little bit of context on how come I am here, I have the honor of coordinating a project that is actually being implemented by Access Development Services, and you can find the booth of the fund out there. This is the Investing in Agroecology Value Chains project, funded by BMZ and carried out in India by IFAD, and Access is kindly acting as our fund manager. So this is a fund that is providing seed funding to agroecology-based enterprises for exactly this purpose of bringing them to scale. So I am as excited as you are to learn more about this topic from our panelists here today. So our session aims to delve into the transformative potential of agroecology and agroecology-based enterprises in shaping sustainable and resilient food systems. And as we navigate this dynamic landscape of agriculture in India, where a significant portion of the population relies on this sector for their livelihoods, the need to balance productivity and sustainability becomes paramount. So today we have esteemed panelists with diverse expertise ranging from international development to natural resource management, rural development, and agricultural innovation. Agriculture is the primary livelihood for almost 60% of the population in India. However, challenges such as climate change, market uncertainties, and supply disruptions pose risks, particularly for resource-poor farmers. And there, agroecology emerges as a holistic solution, blending ecological and social principles to create resilient farming systems. The urgency is apparent, and the recognition of agroecology's business case signals a significant shift. We're moving away from the traditional trade-off between productivity and sustainability towards a more balanced coexistence. Organizations across sectors are realizing the potential of agroecology and its enterprises, acknowledging their role in unlocking benefits for nature, climate, health, and economy. In this context, agroecology isn't just a concept. It's a transformative force advocating for diversity, co-creation, synergies, efficiency, recycling, resilience, human and social values, culture, and responsible governance. So our focus today goes beyond just the theory of agroecology. It's about actionable objectives. We're here to unravel strategies, propelling the scaling up of agroecology-based enterprises, and think about how we can navigate the complex policy landscape for a smooth transition of farm businesses into this sustainable model. Our distinguished panelists, each with a wealth of experience in their respective fields, will share insights on how agroecology can be a game changer. We will explore strategies to scale up agroecology-based enterprises and the necessary policy frameworks to facilitate this transition. Additionally, we'll discuss the roles of various stakeholders in supporting and sustaining this transformative journey. So now, without further ado, let's hear from our panelists. Each will provide remarks, offering unique perspectives and practical experiences on agroecology. Following their remarks, we plan to leave ample time to open the floor to you for a crucial question and answer session so that we can engage in an active dialogue between our panelists and our esteemed audience. So once again, we have here on stage with us Mr. Rajiv Vahal, who is the Director for Natural Resource Management and Agroecology at GSET in India. He brings over 33 years of diverse experience, leading projects in water security, sustainable soil management, and more. And he coordinates efforts in agroecology, rural development, and social protection. His technical expertise and organizational insights have made significant contributions to the international agencies, governments, civil society, and the private sector in India and in Africa. So thank you very much for being here and sharing your insights with us today, Mr. Rajiv. Next on the stage, we have Mr. Siraj Hussain, who boasts a distinguished career, having served in key roles in the Indian Administrative Service, which he joined in 1979. Notably, he held positions such as Joint Secretary in the Department of Food and Public Distribution and as Chairman of the Food Corporation of India. Post-retirement, he continued as a visiting senior fellow at the Indian Council for Research on International Economic Relations and currently serves as the trustee of the World Food Programme Trust for India. So thank you very much for being here and sharing your insights, particularly on the policy aspect of agroecology. Next, I would like to welcome Ms. Nivedita Varshnea, who is the country director of Welthungerhilfe in India since 2015, and who brings over 28 years of experience in the development sector. She collaborated with the Ministry of Rural Development, national CSOs and CSRs, focusing on food security, sustainable agriculture, ecological value chains, forestry, and natural resource management. Welthungerhilfe has been supporting CSOs in India for over 55 years and emphasizes sustainable agriculture, environment, nutrition, livelihoods, water, sanitation and hygiene, civil society strengthening, and improved governance. So thank you very much for being here today and for sharing your insights, particularly on SMEs and farmer-producer organizations. And last but not least, we have with us Dr. Ramu, who is the Executive Director at the Center for Sustainable Agriculture and the Executive Director of the Krishna Sudha Academy for Agroecology. And he is a true champion in sustainable agriculture, leading initiatives in Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, and Maharashtra. He collaborates with over 50,000 farmers to establish ecologically and economically sustainable agricultural models. His expertise extends to being the largest participatory guarantee system certifying agency in the country. So thank you very much for being here, and we look forward to hearing from you. And with this, we're going to dive right into our first question, which is going to set the stage a bit for us to really understand what it looks out there when it comes to agroecology-based enterprises. What do we actually mean by that? And what are some examples of what we are talking about today? So, Mr. Ramo, with your expertise in sustainable agriculture and your involvement in promoting natural farming, can you tell us a bit what it actually looks out there? What do we see on the ground when it comes to agroecology-based enterprises? Can you share some success stories or some key learnings and tell us a bit about what are those businesses that we're talking about today?
Thank you. Good afternoon, all. When we talk about agroecology, it's about recreating an ecosystem. It's not just about one set of practices being adopted by the farmers. So, in agriculture, farmers require extension and advisory services. Farmers requires inputs, farmers requires market access, requires finance support. So all these support which is required by the conventional agriculture, even farmers shifting towards agroecology also requires. But the challenge is how much we can decentralize and create them as institutions or enterprises which can sustain beyond the project level. I think that's what we should look for. So from that point of view, if you look at when the green revolution happened, government of India has set up seed corporations, it has set up fertilizer factories, it has set up procurement centers and distribution centers. Now how do we decentralize it? How do we decentralize so that the village level we can have small enterprises which can also produce the same inputs and supply to the farmers, say seeds. We can have a large number of seed producing entrepreneurs in the villages who can produce and supply seeds to the farmers. Nearly 70 to 80% of the seeds which are used today can easily be produced at the village level. They are not hybrids. They're not. There's no rocket science in that. Even the biggest seed company in this country also produces with farmers. It's just that they supply the parent material. Farmers can do it very easily. So seed enterprises would be one important support system for the entire agroecological transition. This is very important because currently what is available in the market, these seeds are all selected for high chemical input responsiveness. So when we use the same seeds in organic growing conditions, the response is not as expected. So it's always good to have selections and then from the same varieties, and then also promote them, promote the rural entrepreneurs who can produce and supply. Similarly, there are a lot of indigenous varieties which are really doing well in local conditions. So they also can be multiplied and supplied. Large industry is not interested in doing that. So that's one area. Second, bio inputs. Expecting that all farmers will produce their own inputs is also far from reality. There could be family level issues, there could be drudgery issues, many efficiency issues, and alternative opportunities which farmers has. So all that pushes farmers also to buy from the market. So when they are buying from the market, not all inputs are available in the market. So there's farmers depend only on the chemical inputs. So if we can set up bio resource centers, bio enterprises at the village level, this can fill the gap. A rough estimation shows, say, if there's a village about 500 to 1,000 acres, anywhere between about 75 lakhs to 1 crore is spent on inputs, just on seeds and bio and inputs. So this can be easily be cut down by over 50% if we can set up local enterprises. And this ecosystem will create an opportunity for creating that support systems so that farmers can continue the adoption of the practices beyond even the projects are over. It's not just input production but also service enterprises. Say for example, pest and disease surveillance can be a service which can be offered. Custom hiring centers for machine running machines can be offered, and soil testing can be soil testing, and then based on the soil testing what kind of practices can be followed, that can be one service. Farmer service center which can be one stop solution for farmers to access all the support services. Today today on average one farmer has to go to nearly 18 departments to get the services, and if you look at the private service providers, it would be about 50 to 60. So it can be one stop solution a farmer service center can run. It can be a good enterprise which it can be run. Even on the supply chain side, there are several enterprises which can come up, collection centers, primary grading centers, kind of thing. So if you look at all these, there could be opportunity for about 20 to 30 enterprises which can come up in a cluster level, and together they survive. If you are looking at only farmers will make a transition by doing everything on their own, is not going to happen. So I think interdependent enterprises as an economy, as a local economy, we need to build up.
Thank you. And from our discussion that we had before, one question I wanted to ask you with regard to this is, how can we actually ensure that those, or how do those rural enterprises fit into the framework of farmer organizations?
So now government of India is also promoting farmer producer organizations in a big way. There's about 10,000 FPOs which is being promoted by government of India. So these enterprises can be part of these FPOs, and they can provide the services through FPO as well. So instead of FPO having many employees to offer all these services, they can identify local youth who can be trained as entrepreneurs, and then these entrepreneurs can provide the services to the farmers, so that it would be much easier for the FPO to manage only the organizing the people rather than doing every activity. So whichever activity is possible to be converted into an enterprise, I think we should convert it into an enterprise, individual or a group enterprise. The FPO can largely work on mobilizing and then managing and governing the institution.
Thank you very much for setting the stage for us, to allow us to imagine what those agroecology-based enterprises actually are. Now I would like to turn to you, Mr. Rajiv. As someone who is deeply involved in coordinating projects that are related to sustainable farming systems and agroecology, what challenges and what opportunities do you observe in the current landscape for those kind of businesses that Dr. Ramo was just referring to? What is really the business case for following agroecological criteria? I think one thing we already heard, that it's possible to cut costs for inputs by 50% if we're able to localize. But can you tell us a bit more about what are the challenges and opportunities and the actual business case?
Thank you, Elizabeth, and good afternoon, everybody. I think one important thing to observe is that while agroecology as a word may be new, the practices are not new to India. The challenge is that there is a lot that is happening. There are successes littered around the country, but they're in fragments. And that does not create the initiative or impetus for change. So I think the first thing to do is to build up this larger picture. There is a discussion going on between many promoting organizations to establish a tracking system which allows institutions, enterprises to register themselves, so that what could happen is that such a picture for discovery and engagement could be built up. But also then some enterprises only can do as far as this processing, but the markets are missing. So this, apart from the horizontal connections, the vertical connections also need to be made. So this is the quick win. This is something we can do very easily and take it up. In Odisha and Assam, in the work that we do in aquaculture, there's already a system of creating platforms where such discoveries all the way from farmers to investors can happen. So connecting the dots, making the small powerful becomes the first thing to do. The other thing is to also look at agroecological enterprises with production. So there are three boxes: production processes, consumption, but also the natural resource. In our country, with the way the carbon levels in the soil are, with the way we are treating our water, there will be no farming processes in time to come. So unless we start looking at the larger ecosystem into which the agriculture is nested, from which the enterprises have to come, and that's a huge investment. That's an investment no private sector can make. And here I think is important to see that there are a number of government initiatives, programs, like Watershed Programs 2.0, PMKSY, MG Narega, which is huge public endowments, totally which can be designed and invested into creating the ecosystem support services that will sustain and encourage and enhance the enterprises from the current level. I'm very happy that in some of the work we do with Ministry of Rural Development and Jal Shakti, using GIS and such processes, we have helped map now of almost 290,000 panchayats, GIS-based layers for 280,000 panchayats. So this is all where we need to also integrate the resources, both from financial perspective. So what does it mean? These should lead to planning by the villages and the panchayats, the farmers and the non-farmers, to implement watershed-oriented change processes using public funding to create the ecosystem support services that will nurture ecologically rich farms and the enterprises going forward. Another experience that we are having is with NABARD, where we are working on almost 3 million hectares of watershed work that they've done, where all the water assets and productivity is created. Now, how do you convert that into successful, sustainable agriculture? So again, working on a program called Jiva in 11 states in 24 pilot locations to really build this connect between natural capital, the economic capital, social capital, and moving it forward. And maybe the last thing to talk in Indian context on this part is that government remains a main promoter in India. And just the private sector enterprises will not work very well beyond a certain point. So I think the policies and programs of the government, there's already a national mission on natural farming that has been established. But I think there is a need to make more financing available to seed investments in areas which are risky, where investments for private sector can come in. This could be from a viability gap funding perspective. These could also be from, but very important, these have to be bottom up, flexible funds available. Because very often in designing such programs and scheme, we put in limits which go beyond or defy the contextual and local logic of the way agroecological processes emerge in different areas. On to your second point about the business case, I think it's very important that we sell the agroecology story well to the shareholders, to the investors, to the consumers. Uh, if this is not there, there may be not enough pull to sustain the enterprises, to lead to the scaling up that is desirable. So I think it's very important from that perspective to put together the social and the ecological impact stories, to build them into narratives that connect the hearts to the purse. Could there be ways of QR based product codes on each product which we claim to be naturally done, so that as a consumer, I can know from which village it has come and know the story and feel a connect to it. I think we also have to build an economic case. And in the whole story of increasing the wealth creation, we have to show that circularity and such agroecological approaches become important. A case in point is the work we do in Maharashtra on urban-rural nutrient carbon cycle. In almost 340 urban bodies, where the urban, all the vegetables that have come from the villages form an organic waste and a problem. The composting is done, it's organically certified, and we are helping it go back to the villages from where the soil basically in form of nutrition and as a vegetable has come. So at each level, we are discovering value stories here. And therefore, this sort of a circularity is something that we have to make a business case of. We already know Nestle has picked up very well on the millet stories of last year. They've come up with a lot of innovative products. So I think we need to work with industry to also create such things. And maybe just the last thing is the financing at scale that I was talking about. In many of these agroecological transitions, the farmers enhance their risks and vulnerability in the beginning. It's all the way from climate to the processes to the markets. From this perspective, I think, and also there's some yield reduction as people take it over. How can we cover the initial risk to the farmers so that they provide at time the quality and the produce that the enterprises need? Also, banks and financial institutions would only invest in very risky areas if somehow their fiduciary risks are also covered. Can we think of a large scale revolving fund to de-risk? So you don't need to invest, but can we create a fund to de-risk such eventualities if the loans go bad? Maybe the last one, and this follows up on what Dr. Ramu was also saying, many of the processing, pack houses for export, logistical things need a huge investment. You're looking at a pack house or a processing center with 8 to 10,000 crore. No one FPO can do it. So while we talk of custom hiring centers, can we have custom service centers where enterprises come in, they invest, or on a per kg, just the way it happens in cold storage? But this would need investment. I mean, here's a story in Meghalaya where farmers are still selling their organic pineapple for 10 rupees with no price discovery just because the FPOs cannot afford to have a reefer van and be able to send it here. So I think some of these things are things that can be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think you really added to this rich picture that we're trying to paint about what it looks like out there, what it is that we actually need to do. And I really appreciate how you draw this picture of how we connect the dots horizontally and vertically, and what needs to be done in terms of financing and in terms of policy. And we will have the chance to talk about this a bit more in the subsequent questions. But next, I would like to turn to Nivedita to talk to her about her experience with Welthungerhilfe. Ms. Nivedita, what issues have you observed that particularly then the SMEs and the FPOs, they observe the challenges they face when they attempt this transition to more agroecologically based enterprises?
Thank you, Elizabeth. So from the experience of WHH, and we work along the entire value chain from production to certification to market access. So we have noticed, we have faced several challenges. By we, I mean the CSOs we work with, the farmer producer organizations. And some of the challenges with the FPOs have been similar to what Ramu has already mentioned. First of all, I would like to say that the FPOs working on ecological agriculture face not just the challenges which a normal farmer FPOs would face, but in addition, if they are smallholder family farmers, they have another layer of challenges. And another layer, of course, comes when they are trying to produce ecologically. So there are these different levels of challenges that ecological FPOs face. At the production level, also similar, there are several problems like the value chains related to ecological produce are very labor intensive. Many of the farmers lapse back into normal mainstream conventional agriculture because you're not able to cope up with the labor needs of ecological agriculture. The bio inputs, which Ramu already mentioned, the bio input production, it's not an easy job, and they also it's not easily available. Then regarding the extension, so most of the time there is a huge skill gap, and they have no extension agents to fall back on or to find mentoring or hand holding support from. So, the mainstream extension agencies, they are mainstream. They don't talk about ecological agriculture or ecological production methods. So that's something which is very tough, and it makes them very dependent on the NGOs they are working with or whatever or agencies they are working with. And then we have also found that, like Ramu also said, that they struggle with several government departments, especially if they are trying to do things like integrated farming systems. That's something that WHH promotes extensively. And if you're talking about aquaculture or poultry or animal husbandry to be integrated into ecological farming, they find that they have to run to several departments if they want to get support from the government. So there is no single window scheme that actually they can avail of. So these then at the FPO level, there are lots of operational challenges they face as FPOs because they're small. The farmers, it's also very difficult for the smaller farmers to make them think in terms of profits. So they're usually very used to working on just sustenance. So thinking of profits, why they should work towards profits as an organization. Then also there are management issues. Internally, the capacities on financial management are not there. There are issues related to connecting to the market. So, and part of this market access issue is also certification, because ecological produce requires some kind of certification. So WHS is extensively promoting PGS, participatory guarantee systems, which is also not, it is relatively simpler than third-party certification, but also not so easy to adopt, and the government compliances are quite strong. Even for FPOs in general, the compliances become a challenge. So whether it's PGS compliances or compliances as institutions, they struggle with these challenges. On market access, they are not so well connected. So most of the farmers, they are very scared of transitioning unless they have some kind of assured buyback agreements, And this is not easy. So either the produce is too large and it is not easily picked up by small retailers, or they produce, it's the supply chain is not consistent, which is what retailers then struggle with. So in effect, there is a big disconnect that we have seen between what consumers want, and which is what retailers try to get from the FPOs, and what the FPOs are finally able to deliver. So whether it's in terms of consistent supply chain or even a diverse basket, so consumers would always want a diverse basket. They want everything in their kitchen. But then for the retailer to run around trying to get this diverse basket in place is also quite a challenge. And yes, so basically the whole connect, it's joining the dots between the producer right to the consumer, along the entire supply chain that we've seen that faces several challenges.
Thank you very much. And I'm happy that we'll have also a question on this connect between the consumer and what the consumer can actually contribute to the transition to more agroecology-based enterprises and farming models. So thank you very much for shedding some light on this and on the challenges that SMEs and FPOs face. I'm now turning to Mr. Siraj. We've heard from the colleagues here on the panel about the challenges and the opportunities, about the need for big public investments for ecosystem services, about how we connect the dots, about the market linkages of the farmers to the market. All of these things, they require a lot of funding, but as Mr. Rajiv also mentioned, they also require government support and also sometimes a shift in policies. So I would like to invite you to tell us a bit more about the policy landscape and what policy changes or shifts might be needed and what we should demand and expect from governments.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So at the outset, let me confess that I do not really know the profile of the audience. So I do not know what you people are doing at the ground level. So, but I'm assuming that you keep track of what the government is doing. And therefore, what I'm going to say will hopefully make sense to you. Now, irrespective of the political party in power, the governments both at the center and in the states are highly impressed by the success of Green Revolution. In the NGO sector, in some sectors of the media, etc., there is enormous amount of criticism of Green Revolution, that it has destroyed our soil, our environment, rivers have become polluted, etc., etc. That is not shared by most of the governments, because those of us who have worked in the government realize that no government can afford food insecurity for its people. And this is what you would have noticed, that in the last 2 years, since February of 2022, the government of India has taken a number of steps which the economists have been criticizing, which say that these are against the farmers, by restricting exports, by imposing a minimum export price, and so on. So the governments are highly concerned about food security, and rightly so. So in the government scheme of things, agroecology is important, but it comes next to food security. So if a minister has to, or the prime minister has to decide between food security in the immediate future and agroecology, which will have a long-term impact, in all likelihood, he will decide in favor of food security. So this has to be kept in mind while we discuss the policies related to government. Now, at the thinking level, both Niti Aayog and its predecessor, Planning Commission, have had experts of water and agriculture. Professor Mihir Shah, I am sure you would know him. He was a member of the Planning Commission, having a lot of ground experience in water. And now Dr. Ramesh Chand in the Niti Aayog. Both of them have written extensively on the need to conserve ecology if we have to conserve the agriculture in the long term. And I am happy to note that there are some very good steps taken by state governments in the last few years. So, for example, Punjab enacted a law which said that paddy transplantation cannot take place at the peak of summer. So, the paddy transplantation was delayed. Of course, one undesirable result of that has been that paddy harvesting has been delayed, and the window between harvest of paddy and the sowing of wheat has become very short, which causes pollution in Delhi. During October, November, of course, our media and people like us, I can include you also, we do not bother much. Once the the farmers have burnt their crops, we are not too much concerned about the pollution in Delhi. So even today, it would be something like 300 AQI, but we are not too concerned. Only when the farmers are burning their paddy stubble, we are extremely concerned, and our media makes it such a strong case. So that was a good decision taken by government of Punjab to delay the paddy transplantation. Another good decision was taken by the government of Haryana, which said that we will give you money, some 8,000 rupees for Kharif, 8,000 for Rabi, if you do not sow paddy and if you move to other less water consuming crop, maize for example. So that was an incentive given by Haryana government, again a successful intervention. And as far as I have read, it seems that the average groundwater level in Telangana has increased by more than 4 meters in the last few years. I find it an extremely good news. I hope what I am reading is correct, but you know more than me about this subject. So, at the government level, there is a realization that agriculture in every region of the country has to be in tune with the ecological requirement of that region. Now, unfortunately, because India's agricultural surpluses are very marginal, and on this I have differed in writing many a times with other experts who have been writing that we have become a permanently surplus nation. In fact, it was said that we can feed the world and so on. And we have been on the verge of importing wheat last year, and if government is not able to procure enough this year, so far the wheat crop is very good. So far the Rabi crops are very good. Even though there have been no winter rains, the temperature has been very cold, quite cold, and the crop is good. So if the crop continues to be good, we would be fine. However, if the crop is damaged due to whatever reason, then we may have to import wheat. So our surpluses are marginal, and therefore the governments give only a second priority to ecological considerations. Now, the GIZ, the policymakers, people like you, I suppose you are working at the ground level in NGOs, FPOs, etc. I do not know. I wish I had known, so that I had said something which would be relevant to you. But in any case, this has to be kept in mind. And one suggestion I have for those who work in this field of agroecology is to expose the young officers who join the IAS and other services to the ecological considerations and the progress being made in the field. So we just keep reading about success of natural farming in Andhra Pradesh, but I'm sure very few IAS officers in various states have visited that. So we do not know what is actually going on. In fact, when I talk to my friends, many of them say, "Sir, it is not possible that they are not using any fertilizer. It is not possible that they are using only organic matter. Sir, it may be only theory and so on." So you need to, whosoever is working in this area has to expose the younger people who will be in charge of policy making in a few years' time to not only the importance of agroecology, but also the success stories coming out of it. So I think I'll stop there, Elizabeth, so that other panelists have more time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Siraj, for sharing about what government is already doing and where there is still potential for more. And I appreciate the suggestion of exposing the young officers to the work that is going on. And I think that's something we can all contribute to. Now, I would like to do a second rather quick round so that we leave time for questions from the audience. And I think, at least for me, one of the things that I would like to step out of the room with today is knowing what I can do in my work, but also in my personal life. So I would like to ask each of you a question on specifically what we can do. And I would like to start with Dr. Ramu. So as the ED for the Center for Sustainable Agriculture, what role do you see specifically for NGOs and for the civil society? Mr. Siraj has been mentioning there's for sure many civil society and NGO workers in the room here. What do you see their specific role to be in the transition to agroecology-based enterprises?
I think one of the key challenge now in front of all of us here is how do we convince government? At least I would say for the last 20 years, I've been working with farmers in various states. And personally, I might have met with about more than 1 lakh farmers. Personally, I would say. And none of the farmers had a question about what happens if I shift towards organic. It's only the agriculture university scientists and then the bureaucrats who says what happens kind of thing. Because they want answers in Delhi. If you go to the fields, I think you get the answers. I think that certainly I would say. Let me take an example of Telangana, which you explained. Telangana water levels have increased, but at what cost it has increased and what are the ecological costs? Telangana decided when it got separated that the paddy area will increase in the state because they were always having an imagination of becoming like Andhra Pradesh. Because Andhra Pradesh was largely paddy area, so Telangana was growing millets pulses, so they wanted to become paddy growing area. So the area under paddy has increased by about 450% in Rabi season and about 250% in Kharif. So power was fully subsidized, so 100% free power, and a big dam was built to supply water. So it costed nearly about 50,000 crores of power subsidy, which government is still has to pay to the power corporations. It is spending on the power corporations. Also, the dam costed around 1 lakh crore rupees, and now the continuation of the dam is also questionable because it requires power. It's a lift irrigation dam. In a state like Telangana, which is in the upstream, you cannot build a gravity dam. So that is a second challenge. Third, very important, for irrigating 1 acre of land, it costs around 50,000 rupees. And how are we going to continue with that? And the last report of ISRO on the degradation, desertification and land degradation report says 30% of land in Telangana is unfit for cultivation because of the salinity and the increased alkalinity. So given that kind of situation, do we need such development? And such short-term measures, are they going to address the food security? I think that's an issue. We need to look at when we talk about food security in two folds. One, I think we need to look at what is happening to the farmers who are into actually providing this food to the people. What is their economic status and what is happening today? In 2016, I think the Prime Minister said we will double the farmers' income. And where did we stand? Nowhere nearer to doubling the farmers' income. If you take out the inflation correction, I think we have actually gone down. We are producing enough, but what is happening to the farmers? Second, very important is also what is the quality of food we are producing it. Say the recent report published in Nature shows that 35% of nutrition reduction in rice, 34% nutrition reduction in rice. Wheat, it's nearly about 54% nutrition reduction compared to last 70 years. And National Institute of Nutrition data shows that nearly 30% reduction in many of the minerals compared to 30 years back. 30 years back, if you take any of the crops you take, in 30 years, our nutrition reduction is by over 30%. How did this happen? This happened because your soils are losing nutrients. The soil is not having nutrients, your crop doesn't have, the crop doesn't have, people doesn't have. So if you map the anemic areas across the country, it's not just the people who are anemic, it's actually the soils which are anemic. And if you want to fortify food, it doesn't help. So we need to actually relook at the way we support farming, and then we look at creating alternative models. Conventional agriculture, let me put it in a way, today the fertilizer subsidy is around 3.5 lakh crores. Food subsidy is also nearer to that. If rice and wheat is not procured, let imagine it is the other crops which are procured, not the rice and wheat. Obviously, people will shift towards other crops, and other crops will increase. If the same amount of fertilizer subsidy is given to the farmers to make a choice to buy any inputs, they will certainly either make their own or buy from local market, the bio inputs. I think the transitions has to be fueled by new imaginations. So today's and tomorrow's problems cannot be solved with yesterday's knowledge or day before yesterday's understanding. I think that's the challenge today. So coming back to this, what we all can do as NGOs, as consumers, I think we need to generate data which shows that this is possible. I think convincing people is something which is very, very important. Probably we should do travel workshops. Say Andhra Pradesh, for example, today went into a large scale because in the last 20 years, we worked with the bureaucrats, took them to the fields, and then showed them the farmers. A successful farmer is the only answer. Nothing else can convince anyone, right? Data anybody can produce, but actually a farmer, a happy farmer in the village can be the answer. So organize travel workshops, take them to the fields, show them what is possible, and show that how an ecosystem can be built. I think that is very important. Once say conventional green revolution happened because of an ecosystem which was created. How do we recreate that ecosystem at the top level and at the bottom level is something which is very important. As consumers, all of us, if we make a choice in terms of buying locally, buy from farmers or farmer cooperatives directly. If you are buying, as far as possible, try to buy organic food, so that you will also reduce your ecological footprint. It will also help you. I think that's the choices we all can make. And today, what is the point in consuming an apple which is grown in California? Nobody knows when it was grown, how it is grown. You have where your Shimla apples, farmers are suffering. So try to buy locally, try to buy directly from the farmers and farmers cooperatives. It will help the farmers to make a transition. So in the food systems, as consumers, we are also very, very an important trigger. And if we are not changing, and if we expect government to change and farmers to change, it's not going to happen.
Thank you very much. And I think right there, we already have some important calls to action in terms of the pressure to put on the system the story that we need to tell, and also what we can do as consumers to push for this transition. I would like to come back to Mr. Siraj now, and we've heard of a couple of particularly areas where big investments are needed in terms of the ecosystem services, in terms of the funding that is needed for to actually make the transition happening. And what I would be interested to hear from you is, what role do you see for public-private partnerships in this ecosystem of activities?
Actually, public-private partnership has been working in the agriculture sector for several years because fortunately, our governments have realized over the years that it would not be possible to sort of nationalize agriculture. At one time, an effort was made when Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister, but it was soon given up. And this whole FPO movement is also an effort in the same direction. In fact, as far as I know, most of the initiative of natural farming in Andhra Pradesh has come from the NGO sector. It was the NGO sector which went to farmers first, convinced them, and then it was again the NGO sector which convinced the government of Andhra Pradesh, officers like, IAS officers in the state, even the politicians of the state. In fact, somebody should write how the politicians of the state were convinced that this can work, because ultimately, at the end of the day, it should not only result in adequate production, but also reasonable prices. The market prices should not go up. In fact, and I said this in the conference in Bangalore, where GIZ was also present, that the government policies should match the government announcement should match the long-term requirements and the policies which the governments profess that they want to promote. But sometimes, we have many elections, from time to time. So that may be a good thing in some ways, bad thing in some ways. So recently, in the recently concluded assembly elections, the winning parties announced a bonus of more than 900 rupees on paddy per quintal. Obviously, in water-starved areas, 900, and no bonus was announced on any organic crop or any crop which takes less water. So nothing for oilseed, nothing for pulses. Now this is where you come in. People like you, I'm assuming that you come from the NGO sector. So you have to write, you have to speak up. If you cannot write, in newspapers or media, at least you can use Twitter to give your opinion, because now, fortunately, and it is not too bad yet. You do have a voice through Twitter. So reach out to people, as he said, start consuming local. So maybe, if 100 people say that we are buying locally produced food, it is not easy to buy locally produced food, by the way, because in the mall near my house, Spencer's, you don't get millets are not available. So I keep telling everyone that availability of millets is a problem. But I was really happy in Bangalore in the millet summit that there is so much of enthusiasm among the consumers in buying millets. So at least Karnataka seems to have done it. In Delhi, I do not think we have reached there yet. There is too much to talk, but we should give them the opportunity to question. Thank you.
Thank you. I fully agree that we need to leave some time for the audience. I have two more brief questions. And again, I think they're very pertinent to what we all can do, and that's really one of the takeaways for today. So I would like to turn once more to Mr. Rajiv to ask you, in your opinion, what is the role of international agencies such as GIZ to play in this transition, and what are the gaps that GIZ, for example, can fill?
Thank you. So I think first is to walk the talk, because we do a lot of talking, but are our own programs even headed in that direction? So one good thing is that in 2022, both the government of Germany and India at the highest level signed a joint declaration of intent saying that agroecology and sustainable natural resource management would be the orientation for all the projects that the two countries, especially that Germany does in bilateral cooperation with India. And therefore, what is interesting is that out of the 110 projects that we do as GIZ with about 22 ministries and on almost all the states, at least about 25 projects with some linkage to agriculture, natural resource management have all started moving towards more agroecological approaches, working closely with each other, sharing, not duplicating, which leads me to address a larger problem that we see as well. If you look at the Indian landscape, we have the multilateral agencies, World Bank, CFATs, JICAs, a number of them. We have bilaterals, a few of them. We have huge, powerful Indian philanthropies who sometimes their own investment, their own support outweighs the amount of support that any of the external agencies provide. And then there's this huge amount of CSR money that the corporates are spending, even if it's on a short horizon cycle, but it's a fairly high. Some estimates range between 15 to 20,000 crores a year. So this is something maybe even 5 states can absorb. But the problem is all of these agencies are doing, if not the same, but similar things, and they're not sharing anything with each other. They're all duplicating the work. They're not really leveraging each other's strengths, that you're good at this, I'm good at this, can we work together? There was a donors conference in Bangalore where I was asked to speak for a short while, and I shared a landscape of how many projects of ours work in how many states and how many districts. And in the tea break, at least about 7 different organizations, but we also work in the same state, we also work on the same topic, we are all doing similar things without cooperating. So I think it's very important that we create platforms where such organizations share with each other. We also create platforms where on specific topics like need for research, need for knowledge exchange, need for standards, what type of funding, on instruments and processes that can push the overall ecosystem, we form alliances, focused, where we bring our programs. We can't change our mandates, globally originated, or are originated from our board of directors, but we can differently find ways where these instruments can work much more coherently and congenially together. The other thing is, of course, which would be the dream thing to do, is that we even design and do programs together. And that way, I'm very happy that sitting with you here, we have a program where BMZ, our German ministry, has actually financed IFAD, and Access is the fund manager with a lot of experience, where a huge amount of funding is available to enterprises to scale up their businesses. So not that we all end up doing parallelly the same thing without leveraging each other's advantages. I think I want to close on a slightly higher optimistic note. I think given the challenges countries like India face, especially in a totally fragmented, multipolar world as we see today, with a huge population to feed, we haven't done too badly. We could do it differently, and we are trying to do it differently. And I think it's very important for all the donors, support agencies, to support the government and people of India in their own vision and mandate to achieve nutritious, healthy, accessible, affordable, trustable food for all. And not just for our own country, but I think if 1.4 billion people out of 7.4 billion people can show a way, then it can also offer a way for many other countries to learn from and partner with. And I think that process, what we also do is to increasingly get into triangular cooperations, where we work between the Indian government or institutions here, another country which is interested to learn, say in Africa, East Asia, Latin America, and also with Germany coming in to really get this knowledge exchange, but not just knowledge, processes, action, results. Can we scale this up? And I think we should take up all of this together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And like you said, I look forward to continue working with between IFAD and GSZ, but also to expand this collaboration, hopefully. And now the last input that I would like to request comes from Ms. Nivedita. It's before we open to the floor, but it's one intervention that I am particularly excited about, because it's really about what we as consumers can do. And Dr. Ramo already, he hinted a bit on buy locally, but I would be really excited to hear more, in your opinion, what is it that we all can do as soon as we step out of this event today?
Okay, so I mean, the first thing, obviously, as Ramu also said, we start, walk the talk. We start with ourselves, I mean, to the organizers, maybe a question: Did you even try persuading the chefs in this hotel to provide at least one organic dish? Probably not, So we talk about things, but we don't really start with ourselves, So the first thing we should all do as soon as we step out of this room is, please, let's question, let's make this start now, if we haven't already. Most of us are convinced about it, but yes, during the course of our work, we have also traced the journey of consumers from being mainstream to ecological, and I mean, there are certain barriers. So we see first is, consumers are not aware. So they say, oh, well, already there's so much pollution around, so maybe a little bit more pollution won't make any difference, That's what, then you really have to educate them. There has to be a lot of consumer awareness. And usually CSOs don't have the resources to undertake large campaigns. But at our level, we have worked extensively on consumer education and awareness, and it yields very strong results. But it has to be very consistent, and celebrity endorsements help. So, for example, getting a Rujuta Devakar to speak for you really helps. Or talk about local food systems, the importance of consuming local really helps. Consuming millets really helps. And the second barrier is, okay, a consumer is converted, but where do I get my stuff from? I mean, where do I go? So not everything that a consumer wants is available at a price he or she is willing to pay. There's also the willingness to pay, and there's this tendency to compare. Premium percentages are so high, or double or triple. But also, we need to convince consumers to pay the real price of food. I mean, this is the real price. Everything that the normal food that we are having is subsidized in some form or the other. But at least for healthy food, are we really willing to pay the price to the farmer? This is the first thing that we always need to convey to the consumer. And please spend a little bit less on your mobiles or on junk food. Please shift, and that shift, once you can, convince, then it needs to be consistent, because consumers have a tendency to lapse back into normal, conventional things are not available. But to have a consistent education, awareness, follow up with them is what we've seen that really helps. And of course, availability. So we also have to talk in terms of, please have a family farmer, not a family doctor. This is what we are always talking about, in our organic circles. It's high time we all started thinking about a farmer whom we are working with, who is willing to convert but is looking for a market, and I am that market. I will, with my friends and networks, I will get this farmer a market. So this is what we have found that really works. So basically, consumer supported agriculture, and this is where we should also make the first beginning. And yes, I would say also joining the dots, trying to consume directly from producer organizations as far as possible. But also, I mean, we've seen that there are a lot of well-meaning entrepreneurs, retailers, people with a good heart, who really wants to get stuff from the farmers and then supply to the consumers. But they're also struggling. We have seen that they have also big struggles trying to have efficient supply chains, also trying to educate consumers, have a consistency. And we do strongly feel the need for example, government support on decentralized hearts, or some kind of marketing support to farmers. And wherever it has happened, like in Karnataka, there has been a large-scale shift to organic, to millets. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nivedita. I hope everyone feels as uncomfortable as I do right now, because I think that's exactly how we should feel if we're not walking the talk. And there were many things that I can take home for me today. So thank you very much. With this now, I would like to open it up to all of you to ask questions. If you have a question, please come up to the mic, tell us who you are and ask your question. I would also like to ask you to come straight to the point so that we allow as many questions as possible.
Hello, I'm Girija Srinivasan. My question is to Nivedita. You mentioned that that's the true value of food, the organic, whatever consumer are now paying. But it's almost 3 to 4 times of what is generally available. So how do we know that we are paying the right price, and who are we paying? What share of that price really goes to the farmer? Thank you.
Maybe let's take one more question and then we go into the answer. We turn back to the panel. If there are any other questions at the moment, please.
it was a wonderful discussion indeed. It was very much knowledgeable session as well. My question is like, when we think of farmers, it's all about, our farmers are into organic farming slowly and steadily, but we need to create a subsistence consumer base as well. When we think of scaling, what has to be done? I hail from the state Karnataka. I have seen it, and I also hail from a region which is very much organic nowadays. It is called as organic Mandya, and there has been exponential change in the thought of the farmers from that region. So ultimately we need to provide the consumer to them. So how the consumer base could be scaled in the coming decades? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I will turn it then with the first question to Ms. Nivedita on the how do we actually know what is the real price of the food and how do we know it really reaches the farmer?
I think we don't need to calculate the real price of food, I mean, but probably we need to make people aware that the price is much higher than what we are really paying, and and the farmer, I mean, we are not even paying the labor cost to the farmer. And if you start calculating the real price of food, as you said, it could be several times over. But I think what we need to start doing is to make that shift and to try and get people to be willing to pay that price, to make that budget shift in the household expenditure. Yes, Ramu. So I think, yes, we need to basically just make a beginning and say, yes, I'm willing to sacrifice something else and be ready to pay the farmer what is his or her due. Ramu.
Let me put two numbers before you. Every kg of rice which is produced today consumes nearly about 5,000 liters of water. I don't know if you all know that. 5,000 liters of water. What is the cost of 5,000 liters of water and how much you are paying for that? 5,000 liters is a tanker of water. Every kg of rice if you consume consumes about 5,000 liters of water. And if the farmer shifts from using so much water and then if he reduces, the yield level falls, it's a taking risk, but conserving a lot of water over there. And what is the benefit they're getting? If you're using, but government is giving free power, dams are built and water is provided, government procures rice, and every kg of rice which is distributed in public distribution system, it is subsidized by about 32 rupees. And farmers who are doing millets or any other crop will not get any support from the government. So neither consumer pays not the government pays. But if you expect farmers to make a transition, it's not going to work. Similarly, look at fertilizers. Per every acre of land in this country, fertilizer subsidy on average is around 7,000 rupees. 7,000 rupees. And if you take out, say, states like Punjab, which uses 12% of the total fertilizer use, which has only about 1% of the land, how much they are using it. So there is already a distorted support systems in this country. That's how the prices of organic is higher. Second, look from a consumer's point of view. I'm coming to that, sir. Say, what is happening is that if you need a Shah Rukh Khan to convince you that to buy a organic product, then you're not paying for actually the farmer, but you're paying for the Shah Rukh Khan. You also need to understand that. So the advertisements, the packing, so all these are the costs. So it depends on where you want to buy. Say if you want to buy food in a big mall where is a centrally air conditioned, you are paying for the air conditioning. It's not for the farmers. In the consumers, the price which you are paying for any food product today, it is less than 20% which goes to the farmer. Less than 20% which goes to the farmer. Minimal unprocessed food I'm talking about, highly processed and all, it will be less than 1%. So given that kind of situation, the purchasing behavior has to change. Third, whenever we talk about prices, let me ask, how much of your food budget, how much of your monthly income is spent on budget food? It is less than 3%. For many urban people, and for many of you, probably it will be 1%. Then in 1%, if it is increased by 20%, how does it matter? How does it matter? It matters a lot for the farmers. So think about it. I think we need to rethink about our imaginations about our food. food safety, environment, etc. Within the existing framework, we cannot find a solution.
I think a lot has been said, but I just want to say one thing is that as a consumer, there has to be a way for me to be sure that what is claimed is what I'm getting. So I think some simple traceability has to be put in place, because without trust, the transaction will not start. Because as you said, it's a shift from cost to value. And as soon as you start shifting from a cost perspective to a value perspective, I want to know why I'm investing in a value, right? So I think one is this traceability, and we should have solutions on that. I think this value proposition, Ramu and Nivedita have spoken a lot. But I think we need to make this more understandable, even though people will still not totally, because it's a policy level thing, what can I do about it? But I think there's a study that shows that 60% of the out of pocket expenditure of any family, especially a middle class family in India, is on health. And I think the direct correlation between good food, nutritionally laden and rich food, we talked about rice, which has 50% less nutrients, minerals. I think these are conversations a lot of people are able to understand. And Corona has created some level of receptibility to these topics. So I think this conversation and shifting the narrative is very important. But I think the third part is to totally turn this principle of mistrust to another level and see if we can approach it differently. All this water that we are drinking, all the food that we've eaten, we know is chemically laden, right? But we haven't asked for its certification. To what level is it chemically laden? To what level is it pesticide laden? We haven't checked it. Then why does, if a farmer do no harm agriculture, why do we want them to certify and prove? I think this narrative is something we have to totally oppose and shift. We should say that if this is verified, that this whole value chain in a certain way is doing less harm agriculture, then it unlocks a value. And it should not tantamount to this person who's doing this type of agriculture to have to prove that their food is better. So I think this narrative shift, and this requires a totally different consumer mobilization of a different type. I think some of us who are maybe from that generation may remember an ad jingle called Rose Khao Ande, Sunday Ho Monday. It totally broke the Indian thinking of not having eggs on Mangalwar and not having eggs on multiple days in a week. So we had a lot of myths around eggs being hot, not good for the body. But just one ad jingle paid for by the Poultry Association of India change the total poultry consumption in India. It cannot be scientific conversation like this. It has to be at the level of the heart. And I think somebody smarter than us need to work on it. And we have to get somebody like that to work on it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think in those comments, there's already quite a lot that we can also take for the second question that came, which is how can we create a consumer base for these products? We're demanding farmers to shift, but how do we actually also make sure that there are consumers on the other side? And I think you had already some good suggestion how we can do it, but I want to see if there's any other ideas on that.
My experience shows that consumers are always looking for a good food. Say, if you look at YouTube channels and then the social media, any talk show or any of the discussion on good food gets huge subscriptions. One talk show which I was part of with Amir Khan talking about pesticides and food had millions of views, and then that shifted a lot of farmers towards growing food without using pesticides. And even today I get calls from the consumers that where do I get access to the kind of thing. So I think as a consumers, they're also looking for opportunities and then go around this. And then if more people start talking about it, and more people who actually matter talks about it, it will change. So for example, a couple of years back when Prime Minister Modi said natural farming, then entire country changed, right? So ICR, which was never ready to listen, it changed the narrative. I think the changing the narratives is something which is very important. So the other side of the story is not much known to the people. I think that's what we need to put forth. Second, there's a large bulk consumers. Say from a farmer's point of view, we can tap on the large bulk consumers. One attempt we are making in Andhra Pradesh is the Balaji temple, Tirupati temple, which consumes tons and tons of food for its own prasad and all. Now government could convince them, and then they are buying directly from the farmers, from the naturally grown food. And Tirupati laddu is going to be organic in the next couple of years, and obviously it will change the narrative. I think many of the, say, if gurudwaras in Punjab shifts, I think Punjab farmers will shift. So I think lot can be done with our own contacts, and then imagining differently. I think that's what we should look for, rather than just looking at how government only will support or how consumers will always pay an additional price. We can look at a different way.
Thank you very much. We can have one more question. I'm being told no more questions. But I hope that maybe as we hang around here, we can fit in some other questions. So unfortunately, we have to already wrap up our discussion here today. I thank you very much for joining us here on stage. It was really a pleasure to talk to you. I certainly learned a lot. As I said, I feel that kind of uncomfortable that makes me do things as I step out of the room. And I hope it's the same for all of you. I think we learned a lot about what we can do in our professional lives as NGOs, as civil societies, international organizations, how we need to talk about what we are doing, how we should Twitter about it, how we can put pressure on also government, but also on how to create awareness for consumers to actually be the other side, put in the money then when this transition actually happens. So I thank you very much for your great inputs today, and for all of the learning, and for all of you to be here with us and to listen so attentively. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for moderating such an interactive session. I request all panelists and our moderator to get together for a group picture. You will have to step forward.